to Jeff and the Rabbi.
Hi.
So as we were talking, we've got a lot of great topics that we've been discussing for the past couple of weeks, all social related topics, from gun control to abortion to same-sex marriage, redistribution of wealth, a lot of good topics. So, I guess the question is, with all these great things, where does the final argument come down? Who makes the final decision on these things? So I was thinking about it, last night when I was, trying to come up with some research for this topic. When I was a kid, I remember when I was young, and I got to about when I was a teenager, and I went over to a friend's house, and I remember there was this friend who just got into it with his mother. And he just let her have it. She told him something, and he was cussing at her, he was yelling at her, giving her a piece of his mind. I was impressed, because this is amazing. I'm going to try this. So I got home, I drove home, I just got my license, I drove home, and I was excited because, when you're a teenager, you're always right, you're way smarter than your parents, and I was, of course, at the time. I got to the door, and I changed my mind. I figured it's not going to work in my house right now. Figures it's no matter what happens, the authority says this is right, this is the way it works.
It's that self-preservation instinct kicked in.
The instinct kicked in right when I reached the front door and decided,
right.
Maybe that works at his house, it's probably not going to work at my house.
Right.
And even a couple of weeks ago, I'm on the phone with my mother on the phone, and I'm all grown up now, late 30s, whatever, I'm all grown up. And she's just going at me on the phone. My kids got a gift, and they forgot to call back and thank her for the gift and everything. It was my fault, I got yelled at. I got off that thing, I'm going to give her a piece of my mind. I'm grown up now, I'm way smarter.
Sure.
I didn't say a word. Didn't say a word, because that's just, in my family, my parents were the authority. That's how it works. I thought I was right. There was definitely good debate to go on here, but I was wrong.
I knew a family that had a system like that.
Right.
The mother would say, I'm big, you're small, I'm right, you're wrong.
That kind of is the way it works.
Yeah.
So I think that's easy. It's an easy situation. I had a good argument, but when it came down to it, the authority said I was wrong.
Right.
So my question is, in society, what do you do if there's no authority? Is there an authority? How does it work?
Right. Well, what do we do? Like, how do we decide our decisions? What's the methodology that's used in our society today?
Well, that's a good question. Is it the most popular answer?
Well, take a look at what's a big one. Abortion's a pretty big one.
Good.
They just had a march in Washington, and the people that are pro-choice, pro-abortion, whatever, they're always vigilant that there shouldn't be an erosion of the rights. And of course the pro-life people, they're always trying to repeal it, and so on and so forth. So what's supposed to happen? Is this going to go on forever and ever and ever?
Well, that's what you think. And listen, I get the pro-life argument. It's taking a life. It's killing a baby. I understand it. Now I understand the other side. There's women have the right to do whatever they want to do. You have the right to choose. There's really no answer there. Should we vote on it?
Well, I think there was a guy running for Senate. I don't even know if he won or not. I think from Missouri.
He did not win.
Yeah, from Missouri. He didn't win. Okay. No. So he made some kind of a statement about his understanding of human biology or something like that, which is probably not such a smart thing for senators to do. I guess senators are not expected to be doctors, and he was kind of playing doctor.
Yeah, he got messed up there.
But the question, of course, was a set-up question, and he deserved to lose the election, because any guy that's running for office that stumbles into a set-up question
he walked right into it.
Is not smart enough, really, to be a senator, in my opinion. So, they give him the set-up question, do you mean even if a woman gets raped, which everyone's thinking, how horrible that this woman should be saddled with a child that she didn't really want because she got raped. So that is really, really horrible when you think about it. Of course, he could have said, well, listen, if I believe life starts at conception, then I have to be consistent and say, as sad as it is, this woman has to bear that burden. Or he could have turned the tables. Term abortion conflicts with her pedicure appointment.
That's a good point.
And of course, if you really support abortion rights, then you have to say yes, even if the woman's only reason is because it conflicts with her pedicure.
She has a right.
Right. So really what it boils down to is nobody is really sure in this deal. When does life begin? Do you know when life begins?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Can anyone say they know for a fact. I'm not Mr. Christian, Mr. Secularist, Mr. Evolutionist, whatever. Can anyone say they know for a fact when life begins?
Well, yeah, plenty of people could say it. I don't think they can get it right. I mean,
I don't think that they know for a fact.
No, they don't know for a fact. No, they don't.
No, everyone says, I think especially, let's say the Christians would say, that as soon as the cells are growing, because if you don't take that as your cutoff point, so what is your cutoff point?
That's true.
How about 1 year after birth? They make a rule. For example, if a woman gets raped and she doesn't have access to an abortion clinic, then she should be allowed up till 6 months after birth to euthanize the we'll call him a fetus, the external fetus.
I think that is the law in Illinois. I might be wrong.
Right. So you give them up to 6 months. The child has to be called an external fetus for the first 6 months, and people, it's like the right of rescission. You signed up for that. No, I don't really want to buy the house.
You get 3 days on any contract, so it should be at least 3 days.
At least 3 days, because it's consistent with the body of law.
Right.
So the reason that the Christians say from the moment the two cells come together is because they don't know any other place to cut it off. So they say, well, listen, something's happening, so let's start it there, because otherwise, who knows? It's pandemonium. Now, why do some people say, no, it's birth? Why birth?
Because then, I guess it's no longer attached to the woman, and I don't know, but still the woman controls the decision on the baby, so I'm not sure.
So they say, well, birth is a good cutoff point, because since I don't see the baby, although nowadays we can take pictures of the baby, and nowadays they show the baby sucking his thumb and doing all kinds of stuff, or reacting to Mozart, and they show if you play Mozart, the baby likes it, and if you play hard metal, the baby doesn't like it, and all that type of stuff.
Right.
So, but even so, it's a good cutoff point, and it gives people 9 months to make a decision.
That's a good point.
Okay.
And a lot can happen in 9 months.
So from a pragmatic perspective, it's much better to call the cutoff point at birth. But I don't think that anyone can absolutely say that life begins at birth as opposed to at conception, or at conception as opposed to at birth. What they're saying is, I don't know when to cut it off. I don't know when to pick the point, and therefore I'll decide, because I don't think, according to the Christians, it says anywhere in the Bible at conception.
Right.
But,
that doesn't.
I don't think it. I don't know if anywhere. Maybe I'm missing it. Might be missing it, but I don't seem to know about it. On the other hand, where do you get this idea of birth? What if someone does a C-section and they remove the baby?
That's true.
Do they have the right then to kill the baby because they removed it? Did a C-section because it was outside? But the only reason it's outside is because I took it outside. A million and one questions. What if the government starts doing forced abortions?
That's true, man. Yeah.
Can't blame the government for killing babies, because they're not killing anything. It would be like doing forced tattoos,
Right.
or forced ear piercings.
Right.
So obviously there's a lot of problems here, and no one really knows, and no one can know, because who could know such a thing?
Well, obviously not man.
Unless there was one existence that was the source of all existence, that you could go back to that source and say that I know man, I know the world, I know life, and therefore I can determine when it starts, because I made it.
That's true, but now you're really you're changing everything now. I mean, you're not going to be accepted in society with thoughts like that.
That's right. This is why so many people wanted to keep the 10 Commandments on the courthouse walls,
Right.
because they wanted to say that our legal system stems from a divine basis, which cannot be argued with, because they knew that if your legal system doesn't stem from a divine basis, then it's always by common convention.
Right.
Then you get a problem. What if a guy comes along and he says that you may not murder any person, but you may murder subhumans.
Right. It could happen.
Because subhumans are not humans.
Right.
And who are we going to designate as subhumans? Jews. Well, Jews are subhumans.
Okay.
And you can murder them because it's not really murder. It's merely abortion or euthanasia or I don't know what it is.
Right.
Elimination. It's not murder. It's elimination. It's extermination.
Right. But it's not extermination if you're not murdering a human, and someone said that's not a human.
That's right. You know, when I have a rat running around in my house, I want that guy exterminated.
Yep.
I don't care. I want him. I want his babies. I want everything
Right.
exterminated. No more. If I could wipe out the whole race, if it was up to me, if I could wipe out the entire race of rats,
Wow.
I would. I'm like anti-rat.
Wow.
I don't like them.
Wow.
Right? So if I could like do genocide,
Right.
you know, the whole genus, wipe them out, I would. You say, well, the world would be all messed up. I don't care. I don't care. I don't like rats. Okay? So if someone decides that these particular people that formerly we called people are really rats, you can get rid of them.
I mean, that's logical.
Right?
That makes sense.
Going the other way, someone could decide that, hey, rats are people too.
Right.
And then someone could come along and cart me off to jail because this poor unsuspecting rat is just trying to make a living, and I put this little thing out, and when he came out to get his food, bam!
Or even worse, if you refuse to marry two rats,
Right?
you could really be in trouble.
That's right. That's right. Now here, you know, they get me because, like in my house, I set up this concentration camp, this rat concentration camp,
right.
you know, and I set up these extermination places for rats. Okay? And I want to get rid of them. It's horrible. So how is a society ever going to decide?
Right. You're right. So I understand the arguments of both sides here. So what do you do?
And what are you going to do? Well, I mean, you know, could go to civil war. In every issue, we're going to go. How about this? How about the same gender marriage?
Right.
So, you know, the president says, yeah, if people love each other, they should be able to be together. You know, and other people say no. Well, where did that come from? You know, people love each other. That is clearly his view at this time and at this place.
Right.
So if you buy that, what you're saying is that we're going, I guess, with the majority rule
Majority rule for today.
for today. So you really can't be mad at an SS officer in Germany
Well.
because, I mean, you know, the country voted for Hitler.
Yeah. And he's actually doing what he was told.
He told them what he was going to do, and everyone said yeah, and they made marches and rallies, and yeah, so it was okay. And the people went and they were doing it, you know, and he set it up, and it was, yeah, they didn't know, blah, 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 but they knew. Everyone knew what was going
It
on.
was in the book.
Yeah, he said it, and they supported it. So the guy says, forget about following orders. I was following the contemporary beliefs of my society.
Right.
And these people were subhuman. They were a threat to society, and I was doing only what was good. They needed to be destroyed. So at one point, you could have a society where people are shooting the abortion doctors. Then you could turn around and have a society where they're executing people that want to stop abortions.
Right. Right. So you're right. That's a pretty tough predicament here. So pretty much, I guess you can answer whatever's in for today. That's what you do today. Now, if it changes tomorrow, then you're killing the other guys instead of these guys.
So a society that doesn't have a belief system that ultimately tells us from where does right and wrong stem. So whatever you say is right, I don't necessarily have to observe, because tomorrow you might say that that's wrong. Once upon a time, people could be sent to jail for performing an abortion.
Right.
Now people are sent to jail for preventing someone from performing an abortion. So if today I do some act that I think is good, tomorrow it might be bad. Or today I'll do some act that everyone says is bad, but oh wait, maybe it'll change tomorrow.
Right. Right.
And I never really know. So if you don't have a source to be able to say, this is where I believe right and wrong stems from,
Right.
you're really in trouble. And so when our society stepped away. So all these people that were saying, we want the 10 Commandments on the courthouse wall, they were saying, if you step away from that, you are stepping into pandemonium.
Right.
And if they would have changed it for the 10 Commandments instead of the, I don't know,
10 sayings.
10 sayings of
Right.
Muhammad,
Right.
okay, that would be okay in a certain way, because at least we go, okay, instead of Jesus, we're going to go with Muhammad.
Right.
Instead of the Bible, we're going to go with whatever. But you got to go with something, because otherwise it's pandemonium.
Now, that being said, though, and isn't that, though, the nature of what progressivism is? Doesn't progressivism say, by the nature of the word progressive, because you're always changing, always progressing, always getting better, isn't that just the nature of how it works? In a society, if we live in a progressive society, well, 20 years ago, it would have been a different situation to discuss two men getting married. Now it's not. 20 years from now, two men getting married to a dog might be something we're talking about, but something right now it's unthinkable. But isn't that the nature of progressivism? So how do you ever win that?
So if the reason why I had to give rights to the orphan and the widow, if the reason why I'm not allowed to enslave a black person, if the reason why I have to treat women with equality and respect is because the divine says it should be so,
Right.
then you could stop at any given point where the divine doesn't say it's so.
But that goes against everything where progressive says it so.
Because we didn't say that the reason I had to do all these things is because of the divine. We said it's because we thought that it made sense. Well,
I'm
once
with
it's you thinking it makes sense, then there is no end to it. And that's why you got the billboard that says pets are people too,
Right.
right? And therefore there's nowhere to stop. And that's what you get from a society that is completely self-centered.
And then it goes to my point when you say there's nowhere to stop. I believe that's what the word progressive means. It doesn't ever stop. So because you continue to go. So in our society like we are today, what is the role of someone who's Jewish, someone who wants to read the Torah, someone who believes in the Torah? Do you stop? Do you say no? Where do you say no?
Let me tell you something about the word progressive, because
Right.
it's very interesting. Progress is a linear thing.
Right.
You're on a line, and you've got a point, and the line's going in a direction. And therefore, I make progress.
Right.
But if it's linear, that means that there's got to be going towards something.
Right.
But if you're not going towards anything,
In fact, you're usually going away from something.
right, how do you measure progress? For example, if a guy is out in the wilderness, and they've done these studies, they take these people out into, like out in New Mexico somewhere,
Right.
big empty area, and they say walk straight. And they have found over and over and over again that people walk in circles. They say walk straight for an hour. Walk straight for an hour. And you will find invariably people walk in circles, some tighter circles, some
Right.
larger circles, but everyone after a while will not walk straight, and they ask them, try to walk as straight as you can, just walk straight, and they'll walk in circles. What is progress? If I'm walking in circles, what's progress?
No, I'm with you.
So if you're not moving towards any end point, you say, well, we want society to be better. What's better? How do you define better? Right? If you have no definitions, if you have no goals, if you don't know where you're going, then you can't have progress, because all you're doing is just wandering around in circles and squiggles. So there is no such thing as progress. So you can't be getting any better because you don't know where you're going. There's only progress if there's a goal. So if, let's say, you believe in the coming of the Messiah, or the second coming of the Messiah, or the world being made into a Muslim state where everyone follows Sharia.
Right.
I don't care, whatever it is, but that's a goal. So then there can be progress towards a goal. But if you don't believe that there's a goal, then there can't be progress.
But and I agree with you. But I think that maybe is the biggest point and the biggest issue that we have in all these discussions we've had the past several weeks and all these different topics. I think that's the biggest problem. Is what your vision of progress is not allowed to be accepted in today's society. And this is my own theory here. I actually think the real definition, and I think we discussed this, of progressivism, is they know exactly, they have goals too. They have 613 things they want to do without. And that's what a progressive is. I think it's really easy. I think it's all mapped out. Any single communal thing where there is an authority figure, where God says you shall do this or you shall not do this, that's what a progressive is going to change. I mean, because that's the whole goal. If you think about it, even the top 10, you keep going. And the goal isn't really for same-sex marriage because we've got two men that love each other should get married. It's really so we can destroy marriage between a man and a woman. Because there is a biblical tie to that, and there is some kind of religion behind it. So what do you do in a society where I think there is a goal? The goal is to destroy your goal.
That might be. I think really the goal is maybe a little bit more overarching. The goal is to be able to do anything I want without any qualms of guilt.
But isn't that anti-religion?
Right. So, of course, you have to restructure the society so that I can do anything I want and I'll never feel guilty about it. I just allow myself to express myself through indulge in any urge that I would like. And therefore, I want no restrictions and no inhibitions. Okay, fine. That might be a goal. And maybe they are making progress towards that goal. Right. So maybe that is called progressive. But ultimately, someone could come along and someone could say, and this is what will ultimately happen, your progress towards your goal stands in the face of my progress towards my goal.
Yes.
And ultimately, those societies will have to either dissolve in bickering, they won't be able to maintain any cohesion, or they'll actually come into war until some dictator will come along and say, all right, you think you, and you think you, I think my way, and I happen to be stronger, and I'm going to beat both of you down, and we're going to do it my way for a while until someone will come along and topple that one, and someone will topple that one. The only way that we can have any society that can function is it has to recognize a higher authority. Now, when you recognize higher authority, well, that could be Stalin.
Right.
But I said, well, why should I recognize Stalin? I mean, who's he? So some people say, why do I want to recognize Stalin? He's just some thug.
Right.
So therefore, say, but if I can recognize a creator, that's a whole different story. That's why in the Torah, when the Jews first got the Torah and they were given the commandments, the very first words God said, I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt. What does that mean? I am totally in control here. I'm in control of life.
Right.
I want you to introduce you. Now, everything that I say from now on, you can believe as a fact, not as common convention, not because this is the way Stalin or Mao or Pol Pot happens to think it should be, or even the people at the local abortion clinic think it should be, or the people at the local Christian church think it should be. But this is the way it'll be because I'm God. Now then, we're only down to one question. Is that true or is that not true?
I think it all comes down to that. Well, that's the toughie, though, because a good percentage of the people don't believe in that. So what do we in society, people who do believe in that, and I hope there's a lot of people, our huge audience here that's watching the show that do believe that, what do you do? Because, a lot of us are on different sides of these issues, but what do you do? If you believe that there is a God and God's the ultimate authority, what do you do?
So you got only one choice. If you believe God's the ultimate authority, then you have to conduct yourself according to the rules of God, and you have to assume that since God's the ultimate authority, he can take out anyone else. And he will. Because so far, historically, everyone else that's had a different worldview,
right,
whoever it might be, has come and gone. So you got to just have the faith in that I have to conduct myself according to that view. Now that might mean spending some time in the gulag.
Right.
Might mean spending time in the gulag, or worse, because the society might say, hey, wait a second. You believe in that? Did we see that you weren't working on Saturday? Yeah, off to the gulag for you. Re-education.
Well, that's
right. That's happened plenty of times. Happening right now.
Yep.
If you go afoul of the power, whoever's in power, you're going to be up for re-education. But if a person believes what they believe, that's sometimes they're required to hold their ground and stay steadfast. And you got to believe. Well, if you believe in God, God's going to help you out.
There was something even more scary than that can happen to you. You might have to change some of the things that you do. That's even worse than the gulag.
Yeah.
Does that mean, though, that, I can't really work on Saturday? Does that mean can't eat lobster anymore? I mean, these are tough things. That's even tougher than going to the gulag.
That's right.
So I mean, it's a lot easier to go the other route here. The progressive route's a lot easier. I can do whatever I want. You can't tell me.
That's right. And really what it means is that I can marry who I want and have children when I want, or abort them when I want, and do all the things that I want when I want, but not when I don't want. But ultimately, if you don't have it, the truth is any society that doesn't will ultimately either fall prey to a dictator or will fall apart in chaos. Those are the only two ends.
Right, and that's probably true. Does the Torah say anything about the majority? Does the Torah address majority rule?
Yes. The Torah says very clearly, you go after the majority for good. It's a very strange sentence. The Torah says, Acharei Rabim Lahatos. You go after the majority for good. Right. That doesn't mean that you go after the majority for bad. And what does that mean, for good or for bad? So it's very interesting. The Talmud says that you follow the majority. Let's say they have a person that's on trial, and we don't know if she should be condemned to death or not. If the majority says majority rule, we will go after the majority. And majority says he should live. But if the majority says that he should die, we still are going to look for ways to undermine the majority because we don't want bad to happen. In general, it teaches us a rule that if the majority is doing bad, that doesn't mean we follow the majority. When the majority is doing good. Now, how do you say good and bad? Well, you have to study your Word of God and see what He says. If we have two different versions and each is making a plausible argument, this is what God says, and the other one says this is what God says, and they both have a plausible argument, then we'll go with the majority.
Well, in a good example, today, we talked about same-sex marriage. There's people out there that are arguing with me, how can anybody be against that? These people are in love. This is good. How can you old Neanderthal thinking people stop two people that are in love just because of some things, the way the prejudices people had before? How can you stop them from getting married? That is good. That's the right thing to do. How could you going to judge these people?
Right. And the answer to that is that nowadays people spell the word love with 3 letters.
What are those?
S-E-X.
That's a good point, too.
You see, no one is saying that a man can't love another man. What the Torah says, a man can't have sex with another man.
That's a good point.
The Torah didn't say they can't love each other. David and Jonathan says they had a tremendous love. Their love for each other was huge. Now, there's another thing which is called sex. And people have sexual intercourse with each other. The Torah said only men and women should do that, not men and men. Not women and women, only men and women should do the sex. The Torah didn't say anything about who you can love and who you can't love. Never said a word about that.
That's not fair.
If you say that, and anyway, the whole argument is specious anyway, because that would mean that bisexuals, so if you can have sex with a male or a female, and you happen to love a female, would not people that promote homosexual relations allow you to have a relationship with a male? Would they say that you're only allowed to have relations with a male if you love him? What if I proclaim, I do not love this man, I just want to have sex with him? Is that against the law?
Heck no, that's progress right there anyway. So
right. So that argument is ridiculous. It has nothing to do with love. Right. Because if two men say, we do not love each other, we just happen to want to have sex together right now, but I do not love him, and I don't want to engage in a long-term meaningful commitment. I just want to have sex. Anything wrong with that?
So I guess if the progressive society said, okay, that we draw a line with. You can't do that.
But they can't.
Right, they can't.
But they can't because then that would mean that you're already starting to make decisions. And the point is they can't make decisions because they have no basis on which to make those decisions.
So that's the real key there.
And therefore it keeps coming back. I am Lord your God, says in the Torah. That gives you a basis to make decisions. And without it, we will never be able to determine right and wrong. And that is the fundamental power of the Torah, wherein God says to man, that's why God introduced himself to mankind. He says, now that you know me, now you can actually make decisions. You can actually determine right or wrong. And otherwise, you'd never have a chance.
So then I guess the big question here, the elephant in the room that no one ever wants to talk about these things, and it's got to be in the room somewhere, is it possible then for a complete progressive to believe in God? And can someone who believes in God be a complete progressive?
I don't think that a progressive would be able to believe in a personal God. They will tell you they believe in God, Einstein's God,
Right.
Spinoza's God, all that type of stuff. The energy, maybe something like that, maybe even a creator. But a personal God that has expectations from man? No, because once you believe in a personal God that has expectations, you have to find out what those expectations are, and there's going to be some rights and some wrongs, and whichever the wrongs are, people will feel guilty when they transgress them, and a progressive would not want that to ever happen.
Wow, you are politically incorrect here. I don't know how you can survive walking down society here.
Listen,
you might have to go for rehab.
I'm just saying all this now because it's still legal for me to say.
Right.
I want to get out. The problem is though, I'm leaving a digital trail.
That's not a good.
And when they come to get me,
we might have to edit.
They'll know what my address is, and so I'm done for.
Well, the good thing is though, that there's always rehab, and we can re-educate you and get you back into society, because those are tough words. There's people out there. If anybody's really watching this show, there will be people out there who be very angry to hear that.
See, we might be lucky. Since no one's watching, we might get away with this.
Right. We have a small, but again, that's always my question, and I think you've answered. I don't know how you can justify progressive thought and then come out the next day and show up at church or show up at synagogue, and I just don't know how you do it. That's my question.
Yeah, so people live with all kinds of inconsistencies.
True, that's true.
As a matter of fact, you see people show up at church or synagogue and then go out the door and go do a sin.
Well, that's true.
Right? So it's not, people are known to be able to do things like that.
True.
People aren't totally consistent. But I would just say that once you have committed yourself to that path, that the liberal humanist path,
Right.
there really is no end, and society will ultimately end up in total chaos. It cannot end in a harmonious way.
And that makes sense. Wow. Well, I like that. I think this is very interesting because, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who have different opinion on this, and love to hear it. We got a Facebook page, Jeff and the Rabbi. You can state your opinion, and I'd love to hear the other side.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I agree with you, Rabbi Friedman, on this, but I know there's people who don't, and I like to hear what they have to say.
That's right.
It'd be
That would
very
be fun.
Go to the Facebook page, Jeff and the Rabbi.
And if you have something intelligent to say, we'll even respond.
Maybe. Depending. Or we'll just delete it and because we'll censor it so people can't see that.
Right. If it agrees with us, it doesn't.
Right. Exactly. All right, great show. We'll be back next week with another great episode.